Hey everyone, this is Andrew from the Console Gaming Crew, and we couldn't be happier to announce that we are now a part of the Boss Rush Podcast Network and are featured on BossRushGames.com. BossRushGames.com is a great place where you can find up-to-date news articles, blogs, and podcasts about video games. In addition to that, there's a growing collection of podcasts in not just the gaming community, but other communities as well. We are honored to be a part of such a great network of podcasters, so please stop by and give everyone a listen. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.
Yo, crew members, what it be?
Hey, oh!
Hi.
I mean, it was quiet, but it was at least happy sounding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
I can
what's
dig
up,
it.
everybody?
So we'll take it. We are here doing something new for a change, which is always nice because we have been trying to figure out something else because when it comes to video game news, you kind of just got to roll with what you're given. So when there's, states of play and new trailers and stuff, we always have content. Other than that, we have heroes and villains, but we wanted to find something new that we could give you guys, and this was a collective effort. Everyone kind of had a hand in figuring out what to call this and where we would go with it. And if one of y'all want to tell them what we're doing. Oh, my dog is going banana land right now.
Yeah, so is your throat.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so what we're doing is a little segment that we're going to be calling Consoles Through History.
Yeah. The reason we decided to do this, and I brought this up, is with a lot of people, you would think, even people that would consider themselves avid gamers, you would think that consoles began with, Atari. And then, you went from like Atari to Nintendo, and that's kind of where everything started, which, as we found out, could not be further from the truth.
Yeah, true that.
Could not be further from the truth. So we worked this out to figure out, we wanted to go through the timeline, come up with, the different consoles, and we did narrow it down a little bit because there are hundreds. There are hundreds. So we wanted to make sure that, we could do this before we're all, 75 years old. So we did cut the timeline down a little bit. We were racking our brain trying to figure out a title, and then Anthony just immediately, what about Consoles Through History? Well, shit, that works.
Yeah.
So this
Keep it
is,
simple.
yep. So this is the first episode of Consoles Through History, and it takes us all the way back to 1967 with what is called the brown box.
Now, most of us will not remember 1967.
No.
We will not know anything about gas prices being 33 cents a gallon. We do not know about The Graduate being the highest grossing movie of that time. And we certainly do not know about the song To Serve With Love by Lulu.
That's a great song, by the way.
The one thing we do know, just because of how significant it was that on August 30th, 1967, Thurgood Marshall was confirmed as the first Black Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah, we're going back a ways. Now, you said the top grossing movie was The Graduate. You mean it wasn't a Marvel
Graduate.
movie?
No, man. Yo, things were a little different back then. Okay.
I guess so. So 1967, going all the way back there, is when you have the brown box. And the brown box is the machine that paved the way for video games of today. So we're going to hit you with a little history on that and some of the top games and maybe some innovations. But let me start by saying that I got a lot of this information. Well, we all got a lot of our information from the National Museum of American History website because they have great breakdowns on all this old shit. And so, without further ado, in 1967, Ralph Baer and his colleague Sanders Associates developed a prototype for the first multiplayer, multi-program video game system. And since they hoped to license the technology for a commercial venture, they understood that the games had to be fun or else the investors and the consumers would not be interested, which, goddamn if that ain't the truth. In an oral history review, which actually you can find copies of at the archives at the National Museum of American History, Ralph Baer stated that the minute they played ping pong is when they knew they had a product, because before that they weren't too sure. Now, originally called TV Game Unit Number 7, much like the Pump Unit, which came before it. Now, the Pump Unit, it wasn't... It was basically its own standalone game system, but it was just... I don't even know if you could call it a system. It was one game,
Well,
really.
yeah, that being it was one game, but the cool thing about the game is this falls like in the innovation part of it, is if you looked at it, it was an aluminum box that had a whole bunch of different switches, and it also on the bottom right hand side of the box itself, it had a little pump that basically corresponded to there was a couple games that came with it or were installed into it. But it had a little pump lever action on the bottom right-hand side that was actually one of the games. It was like a pump game, and it was the first interactive style video game that they tested, which was actually really, really cool, and I think it paved the way for some of the other innovations that you're actually going to hear about a little bit later in the episode.
Absolutely. And, I'm not going to say that the name was super duper creative, but this was the first time they did it because, again, originally called TV Game Unit number 7, and much like the pump unit before it, this thing was just a brown box, so they decided to call it the brown box.
That's original as hell.
Now
I can get behind that.
Now you said the OG name was TV Unit number 7?
Originally called TV Game Unit number 7.
Okay, yeah. I mean, like, yo, what you doing today? Yo, playing some 7, man. Let's go. I got some 7.
Yo, man, I got the new TV Game Unit number 7, bro. Come over. So the brown box. So the name itself.
it's hey, what are you playing today? I'm playing a little bit of that box. A little bit of brown box. You know what I'm saying? Get up all in that brown box.
The name itself comes from the brown wood grain self-adhesive vinyl used to make the prototype look more attractive to potential investors.
If I can stop you really quick, do you remember? Do you remember the wood paneling you would see in like 1970s homes?
Like what's in my basement?
Yeah,
like
that's exactly.
No,
what's
in my house.
Like what's in Wes's house. It was.
Yes.
It was literally.
Oh
like
yeah, that looks like a straight up like those old pornos.
Oh hell yeah! Rubbing your hand down the wood paneling. Hey, daddy.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
basically.
Get
That's
in
why
the
I always
brown
feel.
box.
That's why I always feel weird in Wes's basement. No,
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No. So though it was only a prototype, it had basic features that most video game consoles still have today: 2 controls and a multi-game program system. The brown box could be programmed to play a variety of games by flipping the switches along the front of the unit, which when we post about this on our social medias, we'll post a picture of the brown box so you can kind of see some of what we're talking about. But Ant, go ahead.
Back to the innovations again. So with the switches, there was actually a series of cards that actually went along with said switches. The way it worked is you had an X amount of cards that would correspond with those said switches, and then you would insert the card, and on the card, before you put it in, it would say, switch numbers 1 through, because it had 7 switches, so it would say switch numbers 1 through 7 in a certain sequence, and then you put the card in, and you could play the game that was attached to the card. So ideally, those little cards were the first cartridges. That were,
basically.
If you think about it, they were the original cartridges that you would use, and then you would flip those switches. You pop the little card in, or the cartridge, I guess you could call it, and then your game would come up on the TV screen. Fun fact: probably didn't have to blow on these to get them to work.
Probably. This looked like one of them Husky systems. You could probably drop down the steps, and that thing would still work.
Back in the day, hell yeah.
No, they built shit tough.
Yep.
But yeah, so exactly what I have here is what Anthony said. You'd play the games by flipping the switches along the front of the unit, and as he said, program cards were used to show which switches needed to be set for specific games. So I think the one we saw, there were switches numbered 1 through 12, right? Or am I mistaken? Was it 1 through 12?
For the switches?
Yes.
No, they had. I said
Did
earlier,
you say
it was 1 through 7? So
1 through 7. 1
yeah,
through 7.
Numbers 1
Okay.
through 7, and then you would switch up the corresponding number and then go from there.
Okay, I'm not going to touch on the games because that was Wes's area, and some of the attachments. However, this also leads into it's the same system, but this is the first episode that we're doing that it's 2 systems, but it's 1 system because eventually Sanders licensed the brown box to Magnavox. I'm sure everyone in the world has had a big Magnavox tube TV somewhere. somewhere in their home. So that's probably what you remember Magnavox from. That's what I remember Magnavox for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Sanders licensed the brown box to Magnavox, which re-released the system, branded the Magnavox Odyssey in 1972. So when you research this stuff, you'll get a little bit of the stuff on the brown box, but you'll get a whole lot more if you research Magnavox Odyssey. But that's essentially it for the history.
So basically, we're going to jump into the innovations really quick. Most of the innovations that were just talked about between Andy and myself were part of my notes, so we're going to skip a couple. I actually only have two that have to do with the brown box. The brown box actually, at the time, was the first, and I thought this was awesome, was the first to actually have the light gun. So
yeah, which we thought for sure, because the first time we
Nintendo?
experienced it was Nintendo for Duck Hunt.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that's where Nintendo got, I think, the innovation or the
idea,
the tech and the idea for their light gun. The brown box light gun. The cool thing about it is the toy gun itself was actually fashioned after a lever action rifle.
That was so neat.
It looked just
Yeah.
like it.
And
Like,
if you
it
get
looked
an
so real.
yeah, if you get an opportunity, you want to search it out. It's actually extremely cool looking. It was used to play a target practice game, and the light gun works similarly to the NES Zapper, in that it used photosensitive detectors to translate light into electric current. Again, I think that's where Nintendo got their tech and the idea from. The other one that that the brown box system had was a golf accessory. Basically, Bear and his colleagues mounted a golf ball on a joystick handle, and it actually allowed the player to use a real golf club to practice his or her putting skills. Those are the only other two innovations that I have.
Just
But-
think about stuff
but
like that
again,
in 1967.
I was just about to say that. In 1967, you have a light gun, which is the first of its kind, and you also have a little golf ball accessory that basically gives you the opportunity to practice putting. That's pretty badass. What do you got, Wes?
Now, before we get into the Odyssey, I do want to go ahead and touch on the games that were actually in the brown box. All right. So the games that were in the brown box, we had ping pong, which is something we obviously talked about earlier. You had checkers, and then you also had golf, which is what Anthony was just touching on.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it kind of gets a little fuzzy because all they really say is that there's 3 other sports games. They don't really give you much else.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah. So
And if
but
I may, really quick, I think there were multiple different target practice games that went along with the gun.
that makes 100% sense.
Yeah, I
So-
think there was like 4 or 5 extra target practice games that went along with it, and they were like they were different, but they didn't get too much into detail with it, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then now from going from the brown box to the Odyssey, we are going ahead and taking that groovy leap into 1972.
Ooh, boy.
And in 1972, some of the real nice things that we know about, the highest grossing movie at that point was The Godfather. I mean, obviously one of the greatest movies of all time.
Classic.
Hell yeah!
Absolute classic.
The number one song was The First Time I Ever Saw Your Face by Roberta Flack. Gas. Only up a little more now. You know what I mean? 55 cents a gallon. You know what I mean? But
We'd all
obviously
still
working our
take it.
working our way towards where we are now. And one of the biggest news stories that was happening around that time is something I think at least everybody knows about from our history books, Watergate.
Oh yeah,
I'm not a crook.
That is a big part of American history.
Now, when the Odyssey first came out, the price of it then was $99.95. So if you want to equate that to what I have, you know what I mean, equal to like 2019 money, you're talking about $611.
Same price as the PlayStation 5.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And one of the real great things about it, so it only sold for about 3 years. You know, the Odyssey itself. I mean, obviously you had later iterations of it, but within this one, I mean, within the 3 years, it sold 350,000 units.
Which is, for 1972, that's pretty fucking solid.
Especially for it being $100 a pop.
Yeah, that's insane.
And for it being something new that no one, I mean, think about it, this is the first video game system, essentially.
Yeah.
So it was something new that people probably didn't know quite what this is or what I'm getting out of it and whatnot. So yeah, I would say that that's, pretty legit.
Oh, yeah.
Now, a little bit more about the once they made the switch to the Magnavox Odyssey. As Wes said, released in 1972, predating Atari Pong by 3 years, which, like we said in the intro, is where a lot of people seem to think that everything. Go ahead.
I'm gonna correct you.
What's that?
Are you on the brown box still, or are you talking
No,
about
Odyssey.
the Magnavox?
Magnavox.
So Atari's Pong actually released in November 29 of 1972. The
And
actual Atari, the Atari system is kind of what made the Magnavox undersell for the Pong system. In 1977 is actually when the original Atari system was released. Give you a heads up.
So you said November, right?
November 29th, 1972, the Atari Pong was
Okay.
was a standalone system that actually released by itself.
Okay, because Magnavox Odyssey released September of 1972.
Yeah, so September, October, November.
Yeah.
That's weird because I have here that it predates the Atari Pong home console by 3 years.
Well,
Maybe it should have said 3 months.
3 months for sure. But if you need to fact check me, by all means.
No,
please do.
I'm fine with that. But anyway,
Sorry.
so we'll double check that. But if
Fun
I'm
fact,
wrong,
a little
that's-
information.
That's fine. But so it was a cartridge.
I
We
got
play
Andy all fucked
cartridges.
up.
It was a cartridge-based console allowing it to play a different game simply by inserting a different game card. Although the console itself was black and white, color was added to the games by use of a screen overlay that attached to the screen of your CRT television. I'm getting texted over here. Oh, it's Anthony. So, since the Odyssey had limited graphic capabilities and displayed only a few small white blocks and a vertical line on the screen, Magnavox included translucent color overlays, as I just said, to provide settings and layouts for the games. Perhaps most surprising to modern gamers, the Odyssey also came with non-electronic game accessories. Do you have stuff about this? Okay,
Yeah, I
perfect.
do.
It leads right into you then. Anthony can
so-
tell you about those.
Yeah, so it was not really like an innovation per se, but along with the release of the system, they gave you a package that came with dice, paper money, and other board game paraphernalia to accompany the games. While they also had a peripheral controller, and this is where the light gun then carried over from the brown box into the Magnavox system.
I mean, it's still sick.
Yeah, I mean, again, so here's my thing. No, honestly, if I have a choice between Atari Pong and I have the Magnavox system that has the light gun, I'm going with the light gun.
Yeah, I mean,
You know
I
what I'm
agree.
saying? I'm
with you.
definitely even if I have to
I'm
buy
with
it
you.
separately, I'm going with the light gun because at the end of the day, it's got more to offer than just boop, boop, boop.
And that's exactly what I was about to say. Now, with the Magnavox Odyssey, I mean, you had initially with it. I mean, when you bought it, you had all these games that came out. You had table tennis, ski, a game called Simon Says, which eventually became the game Simon that we all played as kids. And then you had tennis. You had a math game called Analogic. You had hockey, football, cat and mouse, haunted house, submarine, roulette, and then a game called States.
Now think about this. When we talk about something that, you want to talk about it starting so much shit. You got the brown box Magnavox Odyssey, which obviously jump-started the video game home console industry. But then, like you just said, one of its games, Simon, ends up then giving birth to one of the highest grossing board games of all time. Or is it considered a board game?
Not
no,
like
it's
a handheld.
It's definitely a handheld. If you
A
think about it,
handheld game, and it's still to this day
Yep.
one of the
I was just
it
about
always
to say
pops
that.
up on these lists of like the top games of all time.
Now, one of the really cool. Well, I guess at the time it wasn't that cool, but what Simon Says, the sound was atrocious. Like it was just like ear piercing, just horrible sounds. You had to go ahead and replicate, but eventually with the game Simon, they decided to make it more melodic. You know what I mean? They decided to go ahead and give us, just a more pleasant sound to the ear, so that way parents wouldn't want to throw it out the first day.
Yeah. So Wes said you said 350,000 units sold, right?
Yes.
So with approximately that amount, 350,000 units sold, the Odyssey wasn't exactly considered a commercial success, especially with Pong's runaway popularity. They believed that what contributed to that was one, the largest thing was just poor marketing. Many potential consumers were under the impression that the Odyssey would only work on Magnavox television sets. But despite the setbacks, Odyssey made its mark by starting the video game console industry. So yeah, you had a little bit of, some piss poor marketing, and I guess maybe the salesmen were pulling. I don't know if they meant that as in like the salesmen were pulling some dirty shit. Like, if you want this console, you have to buy a Magnavox TV or it won't work.
Back then, yeah, possibly. I mean, it's very well possible.
I mean, look, shitty sales. I mean, you can look at it either way, but shitty salesmen are every decade, every year. Like,
and I mean, like, the cool thing with the Odyssey, as opposed, like, so Pong Jr., which also came out later on that year, like Anthony said, was just boop, boop. That's it. Like, this had, the Odyssey had games literally for everyone. You had roulette, for the adults. You had table tennis, which could have been either for the kids or the adults. Simon says obviously for the kids. Hockey and football, for the kids and adults. Plus, there were more games that came out that you could buy afterwards. Like basically later on. These ones that I just read out these are just what you got just initially with buying the Magnavox.
Yeah, that is essentially the history and everything with the brown box and the Magnavox Odyssey. So everything that you play today, you owe a big old thank you to Ralph Baer and Sanders Associates, because they started all this.
Yeah,
they started every bit of this.
Think about it. Think about what the Switch does with having the Joy-Cons in your hand. Think about the Wii. Think about the VR and the handhelds for that. All of that goes all the way back to that lever action light gun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's
where it all starts from.
And that's what I mean. And I'm just as guilty. Before doing this research and learning all this stuff, I would have thought for sure that the NES Zapper was what gave birth to all of that type of stuff today. And also the, like Anthony brought up, the golf, like how you could practice your golf swing.
Yeah.
When was the first time we had anything that would actually mimic you really playing golf? The Wii?
Yep. I was about to say that, yeah.
And look at how long that is between, I don't remember when the Wii released. We'll get to that, obviously, because they will be...
1967s to the 2000-aughts-ish.
I can tell you right now, because that will be something we will cover. Nintendo Wii is 2006. It's a long ways from 1967, my guy.
True.
That is a long ways. But... yeah, that right there is the brown box and the Magnavox Odyssey. And the next time that we jump into consoles through history, we'll be releasing them, here and there. That's going to be something that we're going to interchange with heroes and villains and whatnot. But when we get back into it again, the next thing we would be covering is the Atari Sears Telegames Pong system, which we know is super duper popular.
I think I might have heard of it.
You might have heard of it? Yeah.
Maybe.
There's this little thing called Pong, yeah. Just didn't, I don't know that it took off that well, but...
Not necessarily, but it's all good.
But yeah, dude, I'm actually really looking forward to doing this, because we get to touch on some systems that not a lot of people touch on.
Well, you have a lot of podcasts out there that do a lot of retro stuff. Yeah. But even with that, they don't hit, these types of systems. Like,
I'm sure there are some that do.
Like for our first person shooter episode, with how far back we went with that, and talking about battle tanks and and all that other stuff that we discussed.
Absolutely, which I'm sure will pop up when we cover, whatever. I don't even remember what system that was
100%.
But sweet. I dig it, brother.
Yeah, man. Short and sweet.
And it's crazy that they're like that. Legitimately is like every single fact basically on those systems. All that shit is so short and so sweet, yet like we said, gave birth to everything that we have today in video games. Yeah, look, it all started from there.
When it comes down to these consoles through history, this is probably going to be the shortest one, just because of the amount of information that we have and don't have. Obviously with Atari we have much more. Everything else we have much more. With the more up to date systems, but man, this is what we got for now.
Sweet.
All right, everybody. So that is pretty much the way most of these consoles through history shows are going to go. If we have any news that's prevalent and pressing at the time, we'll definitely touch on it. But we wanted to try and keep these a little bit on the shorter side, so you have something nice and fun to listen to on your way to work or while you're at work. So aside from that, I think it's about that time that I'm going to take everybody out.
Do it.
Wait, where are you taking us?
I'm going to take you to the fun places where you can connect with CGC.
Oh, I love to go to those.
But I'm not going to keep that voice. It's just awkward and weird. And it dates back to that 1970s porno. Anyway, you can check us out on our Twitter, which is @ConsoleCrew. You can check us out on our www, which is on the interwebs, at consolegamingcrew.com, which is attached to our Gmail at consolegamingcrew@gmail.com. We have our YouTube channel, which these upload to all the time, and slowly getting more and more content out there, which is fantastic.
Yep.
We also have our Instagram, which is Console Gaming Crew, and we have our Not Talked About Facebook, and then we have our Twitch, which honestly, I don't have the new Twitch update on my phone. So, Wes, go ahead. What is that?
So the new Twitch is CGC Podcast. All right, and that's where you're going to find all of us. We changed my handle to have it go for everybody, you know what I mean? And then we're just going to just run through it, and then everybody just be able to have fun with it. Another place where you can find us that I did not tell Anthony about yet is that you can find us at our network spot, which is Boss Rush Network. So you can go ahead and you can see us there at bossrushgames.com. So please also go ahead and make sure you throw a subscribe onto the YouTube. Please make sure you give us 5 stars and a comment, you know what I mean, on anywhere you can. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, anywhere like that. So until next time, I lovingly say, stay safe, wash your hands, mask the fuck up.
2 masks.
Yes, sir. And game on, y'all.
Game on.
Bye. Game on.